Hello everyone. I have a few things to report this week, so that's good. I wanted to first actually talk about just briefly about what's going on with my health. I think I've mentioned a couple of things before about my larynx and things like that, and I very nearly did not get a Dollhouse Diary video put up last week because I was really feeling pretty terrible. So I had not originally wanted to talk about all of this stuff very much, but I think I'm going to put it out there because maybe someday I'll stumble across somebody who knows something that I haven't thought of yet or haven't heard of yet that might help out the issues. So I do have some seasonal allergies, and I have really bad reflux. And I, a little over a year ago, had a fundoplication, which is when they wrap your stomach around the bottom of the esophagus. They wrap it a little bit and tighten it up and basically like create a valve like situation where my valve wasn't working. And this is supposed to keep reflux from happening. It's not an easy surgery. It's really tough recovery, but I really wanted to do this because the reflux is part of what triggers the laryngeal spasms, and the allergies don't help. And then, that my throat's just constantly irritated, so it's just constantly like annoyed and in spasm, and it makes my speech difficult because it's just everything's so sensitive and worked up in here that I'm constantly choking on my own voice, which makes all of this recording very, very challenging. So I had the surgery. In theory, the surgery went very well. However, it did not solve the problem. I still have reflux to burn. It's just as bad as it ever was. It didn't really fix anything, and so that was just very, very disheartening. Since then, I've developed gastroparesis, so my stomach doesn't empty properly, and I have impaired motility in my intestines, which is something that's always been a little bit of an issue for me. It's always been like my intestines were always a little bit irritable and sluggish and like slow to move, but if I exercised well and ate properly and things like that, usually, I'd be okay. But in the last few years, it's gotten to the point where I'm now on medications every day to stimulate movement in both my stomach and my intestines so that things actually get digested and processed through. And I've never been comfortable being on a lot of medications. Medications have their uses and their values, and I appreciate them, but I always have this sort of nervousness about what else are they doing, what side effects are happening, what long-term risks are there for being on medications for, years, decades, the rest of my life. So I was referred last fall to a gastroenterologist, I believe it's called, or neurogastrologist. I think it's gastroenterologist. There seem to be 3 of these doctors in my 2-state area, Massachusetts and Connecticut, and my insurance would cover one of them. None of them are close. They're all at least an hour and a half away. And I realize that in New England, I'm kind of spoiled that, I can get to a doctor or a hospital in, 20 minutes. I know there are people who live hours away from any medical care all the time. And, I just, that just horrifies me. But anyway, I had a very, very long wait to actually get into this practice. Finally got seen in, I think it was July. I can't even remember, or August. It was August. And so we went down there, and so right now what's happening is they're putting me through all sorts of kind of invasive tests just to figure out exactly what's going on from head to toe. The doctor assured me that he thinks he can straighten out my whole situation with my larynx and will calm down and I won't have laryngospasms. I'm not feeling, I was very excited that day, but since then I'm not feeling terribly optimistic or confident about this situation. I haven't seen that doctor since. I haven't spoken to that doctor since. Apparently he's only in the office 1.5 days a week. The rest of the time he's doing procedures and surgeries. So I've been passed off to nurse practitioners. I kind of get like notifications in my patient portal all the time that say, this test showed this and this test showed that. But nobody's really telling me what's next or what I'm supposed to do about that information. And one of the tests, something happened. It was a thing where I had to swallow barium, and they were doing a real-time view of what was going on, and the doctor said, oh, I'm seeing esophageal reflux. And I said, oh, so I'm not imagining it when I feel that. And he said, no, I'm seeing it happen. When the test results were posted, they listed it as no esophageal reflux. So right now I'm in the whole process of like disputing the results of this test, because my experience in the test was he said I'm seeing it, and then he reported that it wasn't there. So, how am I supposed to get anything fixed when they can't even get the information accurate? So, yeah. So it's been a really frustrating process. One of the tests that I had to do was to check for bacterial levels in my small intestine, and the test came out that I had what's called small intestine bacterial overgrowth, which was basically the wrong kind, too much of the wrong kind of bacteria in my intestine. And I would like to say that, they were going to treat this, and, the treatment was not the worst thing in the world, but it wasn't great, and that everything would be fine. But this condition is actually a result of the other conditions, and it's likely to come back, and I'm likely to fight with this for the rest of my life if they can't get the other stuff resolved. So, so that sucks. I had to be on 2 antibiotics for 2 weeks, and the reason I was feeling so bad last weekend was I was in the die-off phase where all this bacteria, I guess, is like dying off, and it makes you feel chilled and flu-like and headachy, and I just had the worst headache that day, and was just feeling really, really terrible. I'm now done with that treatment. I guess I have some minor reduction of the particular symptoms associated with that condition, which is like a lot of like, being puffed up in my abdomen, my gut, like really bloated and stuff. And it's a little better. It's not great. But anyway, yeah, so I didn't mean that to carry on so long, but that's what's going on. And I will say that all of these conditions are things that, aside from the fact that I do have my fingers in a lot of different pies. Oh, sorry, that's a really dated expression, isn't it? My husband's always making fun of me because I use such outdated expressions, but I'm wearing a lot of hats, juggling a lot of things. I don't know. So aside from that, I also don't feel well a lot of the time, and that also slows down my ability to do as much as I would like with these videos in the dollhouse. But okay, none of that was meant to whine and complain. I mean, I am 60 years old, and, bodies wear out. I just kind of feel like we don't all talk enough necessarily, or like, I don't think we're always honest enough about the things that are affecting our well-being, and that I guess I want people to look at other people more and just be able to think, well, even though they look fine, you don't really know what's happening in their lives. You don't really know how they're feeling emotionally or physically or whatever. And let's just make a little bit of allowance for people sometimes. And also, let's not be like ashamed of things, because maybe somebody knows something that you haven't heard about that might help. And you might be able to find, like, if you're willing to, like, say, this is the crappy thing that's going on with me, maybe somebody else can say, oh, my cousin had that same crappy thing, and this is what they did, and it helped her a lot. you know, or something like that. So that's where I'm going with that. I'm not looking for a pity party or anything like that. Okay, so Dollhouse Diary. Let's go look at the housekeeper's room. So I had, I've got the mirror hung up. I got some new little bits here. There's a little bottle of, you know, probably some sort of bubble bath or something in the box that it came in. I hung up the little painting I printed out. Ooh, I'm getting awful shadows in there. See if I can fix that. I hung up the picture of the mom and the baby, and you know, you can't really, like, you really have to crank your head over here to see that. But that's there. I think I mentioned before I found this little chair and a bag of stuff that somebody gave me, and it needs some repair. It's kind of come unglued on one side. It also has sort of like a sloppy varnish job, but this chair would work well here. So I'm going to play with it a little bit, see if I can sand it down and kind of restain it and repair it. I don't know. I did add several more rows of braid to this rug. I really felt it was just looking a little too small to me, so I've added some to that, and I like that much better. Under the, I kind of hate hiding these, but I kind of also wanted to have these boxes under the bureau because I felt like that's where the housekeeper would store these things. So these are some little, oops, it's upside down, little shoe boxes that I got from an Etsy shop. It was Lorraine Scuderi, I believe. I'll try to put that on the screen. I think I have that name right. I'll have to check. There's actually a second one under here. A little shoe box. And one of these might end up actually going into another bedroom, I think. Here's the other. These look more to me like the shoes that she might have. I think these look kind of like something like the teenage daughter might have, so I'll probably put those in her room. Okay. So then I had a big scare because I went to try to connect this lamp. I was going to have this lamp on the desk, and I was trying to connect it to my 12-volt wiring system, and I mean, there's about 1 million holes poked in the wallpaper back here where I was using the this probe to try to find my electrical connection. Now, what happens with this, if I can get it to work, yep, not going to work again, is when you I don't have my ruler with me, so I can't actually, oh, there it is right there, okay. When you actually make connection with your wiring system, this little probe lights up. Well, no matter what I did, and I did use my, I have a map of where all the wiring is, so I did use my ruler to try to find the exact spot, and the wiring wraps around right here. And you probably remember from other videos that there's a couple of brads here, and I've been using this as sort of my test zone to plug lights in and, you know, see how they worked. And it would light up here, but it wouldn't light up around the corner, which didn't make any sense because this light worked, and the lights in here worked. This light over here was not working. And I freaked out. I thought that the wallpaper paste had wrecked all my wiring and that I was going to have to strip everything down, rewire all this, cover it with masking tape, which is probably what I should have done anyway, and then redo all of my paper trim, you know, crown molding, windows, and everything. The floor, there's nothing under there, so thank God I wouldn't have had to do that. But I would have had to do everything else, and I was just like, I was kind of devastated. As it turns out, these little brads right here, which are now hiding behind masking tape, had come loose. So there's a splice here, and these two strips where they overlap were not making quite enough contact with each other. I don't really understand why that light was working, why these lights were working, but that one wasn't. So maybe I'm not following my map correctly to see the circuit. But every time I, poked in here with the probe, all of a sudden that one bedroom light that wasn't working would light up. When I took the probe out, it would unlight again. So I have redone the I actually did an additional splice here. So the wallpaper, I had to peel it back a little bit. And I have kind of messed up my wallpaper, and there's a new splice in here with brads on this side and this side. And I've taped this down, so hopefully they won't work loose. It probably worked loose because I was plugging things in and out of them, and that's not really what you're supposed to do. So my wallpaper is a little messed up here. There's going to be some trim on here anyway, and I'm going to do some trim that will wrap around and just kind of cover up that rough edge. But oh boy, was I kind of freaked out about that. So I still have to put that lamp in there. I want that little lamp go. I want this little lamp to be on the desk here, so I need to wire that into the wall. The wiring stuff, just always, I get so anxious about it. It just seems like a perfect place for everything to go wrong. Okay. So, oh, and the shade, that's new. So that is actually just paper, scrapbook paper. And there's a little piece of gold something left over from some kit or something. I think it might have been part of maybe a bureau handle or doorknob handle or something like that. A drawer knob, I mean. And so I just rolled this paper around a dowel, and it's actually glued to the ceiling of that little window there. And I did take a gold Sharpie and just kind of trace along the bottom edge of the scallop with the gold Sharpie to just make it look a little more finished. So I'm pretty happy with how this room is coming out. I do think I want to have some sort of a light, maybe here, maybe on the wall, maybe on either side of the mirror have a light, or I don't know, or maybe some sort of light coming from the ceiling. I don't know. I'm not sure. Should I have another light from the ceiling or above the mirror? I really need to look. I need to look at some images and get some ideas is what I need to do. Okay. Yeah. So let's turn out this big spotlight I have shining in here so we can... Aw, it looks kind of warm and cozy. Yeah. When I get some other lights in there, I think it'll look really pretty nice. In other news, I did finish another rug for my shop, so the pink and blue one, and I've actually signed and dated it. So I now have these two. This one took 11 hours, and this one took 13 hours, so these are not inexpensive items per se. And I have just barely started one that I'm doing in kind of olive green shades. So yeah, so I'm not really getting, if I am able to sell these for the prices that I'm asking for them, I'm probably, I will still be making less than minimum wage on the labor. They're very, you know, it's not difficult work, but it's very time consuming and very meticulous, and there's, you know, zillions of little stitches, and just doing a length of braid can, you know, take half an hour to do enough braid to kind of, you know, braid about, what am I braiding, maybe 18 to 24 inches of pearl cotton, and because it's so tiny, that braid, just doing that braid alone could take about half an hour, and then I need to make more braids to get enough length of braid to go around as many times as I need to. So So I think that's everything. I usually end with the peacock, so here's where we are with that. As I say, I have slowed down on this a little bit, but I did get a little more of this ivory done, and I have some more of this dark teal up here done. We're now at 52.5 hours on this one. I had kind of thought, oh, this is so much fun. It would be nice to, you know, do some of these rugs for the shop. But I don't think I think there's very few people who'd be willing to pay me for, oh, what's this going to be, like 200 hours? Probably when all is said and done, to get this done. And I'm not working too slowly on it. I mean, I'm working slowly in terms of I don't sit down often enough to do it. But when I do sit down and do it, I'm working pretty fast. It's just boom, 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 stitch, 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 stitch. It's like I'm not dawdling at the work itself. So it's, yeah, it would be very, very expensive to sell one of these French knot rugs. So I can see why she sells them as kits. All right, so I think that's everything I have to report. Now, for next weekend, I would still like to do a Dollhouse diary. I think I'm still going to try to do them every week. But that said, we are having a dumpster delivered midweek with the intention of doing some major cleanup in our basement and getting rid of some other, you know, things out in the shed and junk around the house. So I don't know that I'm going to get, and it's also the week that I do more babysitting as opposed to very little babysitting. It's like every other week I do a lot. So this is also my heavier babysitting schedule week. So I'm going to have a lot on my plate this week, and I have a feeling there's not going to be a lot of Dollhouse stuff happening, but I will try to still get on Sunday and report on the last week. So I think that's everything. So thank you for listening to me ramble and rant a little bit. And I hope that you are all well and happy and getting lots of Dollhouse therapy. And I will talk to you soon. Bye!